biggest challenge over the years has just been to keep the place going. In some ways, we're really very set here. The center is an organizationally part of the Department of Pediatrics. Henry Kemp never wanted it to be an independent center or a center that was part of the School of Medicine or a hospital, because he honestly believed that only a chair of pediatrics would really care about a center like this that was dealing with child abuse. So when I became the second director in 1981, we were part of the Department of Pediatrics as we have been ever since. And I was also vice chair of pediatrics. So there was no question the center organizationally was going to be fine, but financially we were incredibly shaky. I don't think we ever had a full year budget before the year started. We just were kind of scrapping. And when I started, there were 26 people at the center. And a year later, September of '82, we were down to 13. And I was ready to send letters in November to the 13 saying we're out of money, because Henry had left $300,000 that he had gotten as a grant from his friend Bob Blazer, who used to be dean of Colorado, was then at the Kaiser Family Foundation. And the $300,000 was supporting almost everything we did, except for the child protection team. The child protection team was always funded by either the hospital or the state. There's a $250,000 state appropriation that was put there in the '70s that may have grown a little over the years, but not a lot. And of course, when we moved here, well, there were several moves. We moved to Children's downtown, and then we moved with Children's back out here. But Children's now does significant funding for the child protection team. But everything else that went on in the center was soft money, had to be raised from minute to minute. And it was actually in November of 1982 that I got the 12 of the people at the center together around a conference table, which was in the chapel area of the old St. James Convent, which was the building Henry bought for the center. And I said, well, what do you think we should do? And we decided that we would do something that Henry never did, and that is we would start charging people for our service. We were providing consultations to people all over the world for nothing, and couldn't do it. So we launched a thing called, I can forget the name of the program now, but we collaborated with Child Help USA, which was in California, to be the Child Help Family Evaluation Program. And they sent us $40,000 a month, or maybe it was $10,000 a month, to name that. And I got a loan and a gift from the Piton Foundation and Nancy Gary. The gift was $40,000. The loan was $30,000. And we used the loan to recruit, actually, we'd already recruited him, but had no money to pay him, to recruit David Jones, who was a child psychiatrist from England. Interestingly, back in 1982, there were no child psychiatrists in the United States who wanted to do this work. We did a national search. There was one, and she was very interested in sexual abuse and incest, but she was in the middle of her psychoanalysis in Albuquerque and wouldn't move. So we got David from England, and the loan paid his salary that year, which we eventually got paid back. That's when we also started the Friends of the Kemp Center. They started to raise money privately and they had events. So things sort of took off. But the other interesting bit of history was it was 1983 when Lori Poland was kidnapped. Her case led to 3 or even 4 programs that we started up in the 80s, and they took off, and actually we were able to get a lot of support for it. That was really the beginnings of the START program, where we were helping law enforcement and district attorneys deal with abuse cases. Because she had been sexually abused and kidnapped by a stranger, child welfare wanted nothing to do with her. They said, your family's fine, we don't need to help you or be involved with you. And we realized that when a child is abused, that child needs treatment, but so does the family. And so we started a program for third-party sexual abuse. And there were support groups for the parents in the upstairs part of the convent. The kids played and had a therapeutic session down in the preschool area of the convent. That, of course, also led to, besides START and the third-party program, it led Gail Ryan to start thinking about adolescence and sex offenders as adolescents and how is this something we can stop. But it was always sort of hand to mouth. But the people who were here and the professionals who've always been here are just fabulous. And they come from all backgrounds, social work, psychology, psychiatry. Occasionally we have psychiatrists. And pediatricians, emergency room docs, family docs. I mean, it's educators, everybody. It's a great group of people. Oh, now it's 72, is 28, and 19 is 47 years. 47 years just tootling along.
Yeah.
One of the real differences, of course, is that whereas in the 70s and early 80s, the place was really unique. I think one of the things we have to come to grips with is we're not so unique anymore. I mean, our people are unique.
Of course.
But there are now centers like this all over the country. When I became director in '81, I was one of a dozen pediatricians in the United States doing this work. There are now 1,000 or more. And a lot of places, Texas Children's, Cincinnati Children's, Chadwick Center, the Salt Lake Group. I mean, they're literally now probably dozens and dozens of centers where professionals are working together to try to do something about the problem. Healthcare itself has made amazing strides in 47 years. I mean, and that's one of the things that led us to start NCAN and the National Foundation. I mean, as I look back over 50 years in medicine, when I was an intern, if you were born at 34 weeks gestation, you died. Maybe it took a week before you developed your respiratory distress syndrome, but we couldn't help babies under 34 weeks. And if you had acute lymphocytic leukemia, you died. We couldn't keep those children alive. Cystic fibrosis took children by the age of 3 to 5, maybe 7 if they were lucky. And now, 50 years later, every one of those conditions is dramatically better. The whole landscape of morbidity and mortality for almost every pediatric disease is significantly improved. because for 50 years, NIH has been pumping huge amounts of resources at the urging of a national foundation that has supported startup grants for people interested in the field, has advocated with Congress for better funding. This morning, driving in, I was on a half-hour call with 49 other not-for-profit agencies pulled together by Research America to hear about what the appropriations bill was going to be like for NIH when it gets marked up this month. It's an amazing change in every one of those areas except child abuse, which still has minimal NIH funding and still has 5 children a day dying of abuse as it was 50 years ago. We haven't made that much progress in this area. We've made a lot of progress, but not as much as we could have compared to every other. I think this place has always been unique, and in some ways, it's always been a place that generated ideas for the field. We didn't need to own them, I suppose if we were business or industry, we would have trademarked or copyrighted or done whatever it is as one of the first multidisciplinary child protection teams in the country, and then every other team would have to pay us a royalty, and we'd have shareholders, and everybody would be rich. But that's not the way this works. I think Kathy's out with the 9th director. It's fabulous that we now have a 9th director. I'm sure her goal will be to make sure, just as my goal was, not to be the last director. And each of the directors of the center has put a different emphasis, a different spin, different programs, depending on what their interest was. And the place has kind of grown and thrived and is still ticking along. It's okay not to be unique anymore, but we should be as the best we can possibly be. And if we do, good things will happen.